Hopefully I can get some questions answered today. But before I did anything, this is not like a, hey, look at how good my band is. This is not this situation. This is not what I'm going to be talking about today. But I really hate when I go to clinics someone's talking about how to do music and you never see what they do. So you'll see a couple clips today. This is just a smattering of one of our Midwest entries this last year. It's Variants on a Beautiful Tune. If you haven't heard that piece, it's a great tune by Della Gioia. I would encourage you playing at least a couple movements from it. So I just kind of snipped it together. So you can kind of tear it apart in your own mind. It's perfectly fine. I'm pretty secure about what's good and what's bad in here. So just so you can hear some of the things that are happening, hopefully. Cool. The sound works. Okay, so anyway, I really hate watching myself do anything. So that was really painful for me, but I hope you got to see at least some of the things that are happening. So another reason I wanted you to see that is because a lot of times, at least in Texas, where I'm from, obviously, a lot of people go, well, so the things you're talking about don't apply to my kids because I teach very diverse children, and I teach la-da-da-da-da. Well, my first job was at a very diverse school. We had 87% economically disadvantaged students, which is pretty high. I don't know if they still do ratings like that where you guys are from, but it's really important to me that every student is able to learn at any rate that you teach. That's my job today, is to make sure that you are able to speak to your kids in the language that you know, but not to hand you like, here's something you already know. Take this home and do this exercise and everything will be amazing. Everybody's different, every group is different, every year is different. And I think you know that as teachers. So anyway, I changed the title because I didn't want to say all the words. So Music in the Mundane is what this one is, because we all have to do fundamentals. That's really important. But it's important to decide what the curriculum is. And I'm not saying what songs you play. And I encourage you to take as many notes as possible. If you want to say, hey, stop, I don't know what you just said. I don't have an accent, so that's not an excuse. On purpose. Anyway, so the curriculum is not the music you're playing. The curriculum has everything to do with the things you do every day, or the things that you want your kids to know or be able to do, like the medieval tune. Like, I started working on that piece of music, not literally the song itself, but that piece of music 2 years ago. As well, we played Equus by Eric Whitaker this year as well, and I started working on that 2 years ago. But not like, hey, here's Equus, here's a snippet of it. That's not how I teach. I teach you'll learn, sorry. I'm like giving away the entire presentation in the first couple minutes. Anyway, begin with the end in mind. You've all heard this before. what do you want your students to know? Like some people have lofty goals of saying, well, I'm going to play the Hindemith Symphony with this band because I have the bassoon player. I'm a bassoon player. That's why I think it's funny, because there's barely anything bassoon in it. So, well, this guy's really good and they deserve to be able, okay, well, sometimes that doesn't work for the whole group. And if you haven't trained them to do anything that is required to be played in the Hindemith Symphony, then don't play it. So the year, the semester, the month, obviously you can read, but the fundamentals are for learning and refining your desired outcomes. So let's take, for instance, what I was saying about Eric Whitaker's Equus as well as the Della Gioia tune. There's a lot of articulation. Hopefully you heard that in the clip in the beginning. There's articulative things happening throughout the entire piece of Equus, like constant eighth notes at about, I don't know the tempo right now. Anyway, it's fast. But we're like I do a lot of articulation exercises. Actually, that's a lie. I do one articulation exercise, which I'll show you how I do that in a little bit, but I try not to complicate it for the student. The more things that we give students, the harder it is for them to understand or to learn. So if we say, okay, we have, every time we're working on articulation, we're going to have this particular exercise. And no other exercise ever works on articulation, whether it be hard, soft, fast, slow. We just have to make sure that we're doing it in everything, and you'll see that as we're going forward. But these are not, obviously you want all of your kids to have these things at the bottom, hopefully, the tone, intonation, rhythm, and technique, but those are just some examples. Those aren't the only things that you want your students to know, but those are just some things. Hey, look, I put it up there. The scope of student growth. So when I taught at Westfield High School. That was my first job. I also went there, if you know where that place is. It's in Houston, Texas, North Houston area. And when I went there and when I taught there are completely two different times. When I went to school there, I played in the honor band. We went to Midwest. We did like it all, Grand National Champion, all the things. So when I got my first job at Westfield, I was like, you know, you go in as your first teacher. Yeah, all right, Westfield. It's my old alma mater. No, it was very different. That's the 87% that I was talking about before. The school dynamic changed dramatically, not just with the band, but like educationally, the importance of passing the STAR and the TAKS, those are our state mandated tests that we have, became more important than educating the student. So some of the things that I was having to teach were not very, I couldn't expand as much as I thought I could. I just put it like that. So a lot of these thoughts have a lot to do with my mistakes and things that I've tried that have never worked. So when I say appropriate scope of student growth, I mean, so a student who walks into my band hall as a high school student who can't, A, make a characteristic sound, B, play a scale, doesn't have any range, can't really read music. Like I had trombone players, well, multiple other things, but I remember trombone players in my band every day. There's this kid named Jacoby. Oh my gosh. We had a kid named Peter show him flashcards every day at the beginning of my class period for note naming because he could not read music every day. So I'm not going to give that kid like, oh, hey, here's the Chickowitz. He's not going to. What is he going to achieve in that juncture? I'm not saying he can't, but there's got to be some steps. Like, okay, dude's got to read music first. So anyway. Period, regardless of where they are, you have to create meaning and connection. If we're playing an F concert, you need to make that feel so important to them and how it relates to, I don't know, the Rite of Spring. Okay, that's basically a whole note, right? I mean, but it has to have motion, and we'll talk about that here. Anyway, so some essential things. This is where it gets into things that I don't want to just give you specific information, but I want you to be able to use information that I'm trying to tell you. These are things that I do. Like the exercises I do always start with oral engagement, period. You have to make sure that the students understand what they're hearing. You need to make sure you're understanding what you're hearing. So we sing a lot. And I don't mean like hymns. Like it starts off with we're just humming in F, right? And maybe 2 weeks later we might open our mouths, because the students need to be given lots of chances to be able to center a pitch or understand how their voice works because of course they're very nervous about that. Yes, sir.
And I'm assuming you start with a drone, cut out the drone, or do you just like play F on a piano?
I start with I was not a proponent of this, the harmony director, because I'm very cheap. So we now use a harmony director, but before that I used tonal energy because it was free for me because the guy who made it was my band director. So I was like, oh, cool, you're making this app. You want me to do what? You want me to design some things for? Like, the smiley face thing was way too much. Anyway, but we do start with a drone, yes, sir. And then we usually, for me, the harmony director I like because I mess with the pitch a lot. You can do that on tonal energy too. It's just a little more complicated. But I mess with when they get the F concert kind of down, I mess with sharp, flat, and that's what I mean by aural engagement. When I say singing, I also mean test their sharp and flat, their understanding of what that is, or when they're right and when they're wrong. And it's not about like, Johnny, was that right? It's not about that question. It's about what they look like on their face. Because you know that kid who's 15 octaves too low, and he's got that question. You know, like, hey, well, no, hey, like this, listen to me, cool, excellent. And they'll get it every day anyway. And then you open up to an ah, and then you start singing, maybe, I just do 5-tone scales, or 5-note scales, just go up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, use my fingers. If we want to get fancy, we go 1, 2, 3, flat 3, things like that. It's fun. So we get fancy sometimes, but always singing. Long tone exercise. I don't care what you do, but tone development has to be done through long tone exercises. A lot of people use, I do lip slurs. And again, if you do these things, I don't think of you as a poor human being. It's perfectly fine. I just have found the way that I do things, and it's very simple for me. Because my students at Cedar Ridge, at Westfield, at anywhere I've ever taught, demand simplicity. And that's all I work for. So if anything, a long tone exercise, I use a whole note Remington. I don't do 2 notes at a time. I literally go F, stop. E, stop. Like timing, starts, ends, always considering what motion is. And the students, while you go, well, the students will get bored if they're just playing 1 note at a time. And I do that at like 70 beats per minute. Some days 60. Because I need them to understand that's part of the aural engagement at the top. So as long as they're able to start calibrating what a good sound is and what intonation is, that's kind of the whole thing. Let's see here. There it is. Flow studies. I do use flow studies after they've mastered long tones. So when they have long tones down, we can hold a pitch still, maybe not in tune all the time, but we can hold a pitch still, we can start and end. There's no fuzz, characteristic tone. Then I move on to a flow study. Anything that goes between 2 notes is a flow study. So if you're like, well, I don't know what the Chickowitz or the Clarks is, that's okay. You can do a Remington that's connected. That da, that's a flow study. Because anything that makes the air, and flow studies are for woodwind players too. Like being a woodwind player, people tend to go like, oh, well, you need to just be moving your fingers fast. No, the clarinet players and the bassoon players and the oboe players and everything else there need to learn how to go over the break. So if anything, if you're looking at exercises, you need to look at something that's going to help the clarinets go over the break. So what you'll hear later when I show you the A-flat Clark studies that I go through, you'll see like the clarinets sometimes will take it up an octave into the altissimo. We take the Chickowitz up in the altissimo because the clarinet players, when are they going to get a chance to play there? They're sitting there playing open G all day, right? Like, what is that? You can't let them do that. You have to expand their knowledge in those things. But flow studies, really important. Technical studies. We haven't done it as much this year, but the Close A, I know that sounds crazy, but the Close A is a clarinet book originally. And personally, I make everybody play that. So we have trombone players playing yada-dee-da-dee-da-dee-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, literally. And that's eventual. That's after a while, yada-dee-da-dee-da-dee-da-dee-da-dee-da-dee-da-dee, constantly. But I made him sing it first, which was not fun for me to listen to. But the close exercise is a good one. If intervals and building the technique is not something you want to do intervallically, then doing something like the scales is something that I do scales. And if you don't do any, do at least 4. F, B flat, E flat, A flat, at least, because that's what most band music is in. Unless you want to go to, like we played Jateo Ball last year by Donald Grantham. Cool piece, hard, oh my gosh. And had a lot of intervallic things, which is why we did the close A. And then the scales were all blues scales. So it was kind of difficult to, anyway, that was fun for me. But regardless, I do constant variations on these things. So I don't go and say, okay, we're doing the A-flat Clark studies. Thank you, bye. And you'll see this in a second. But we just do this, thank you, bye. That's not how, I just can't teach that way. But the biggest thing, if you don't get anything from the essential stuff, is it needs to be very simple. It needs to be something where you can move it around, change it up. Anyway, so instructional engagement. This is also important. You have your essential things that you do, but then you need to make sure you're doing these things instructionally. Your vocabulary. Do not use words that they do not understand. And for the band that I taught, or one of the bands that I taught at Westfield High School, crescendo was a word they did not understand. F, ascending, was not something that they understood. They understood F up. And it has nothing to do with them being stupid. It just has, they're not stupid. It has everything to do with them being able to go, okay, I understand what he wants, or she wants, or whatever. So when you say, I want you to grow through the phrase, or I want you to crescendo, my least favorite word in band right now is energy. I know it's used everywhere. I just don't like it. Like I don't like to use the word energy because it's such an elusive word that kids can interpret it in so many ways. And I tell my staff, I said, don't use words that students can interpret. Use words that there's no question that this is what you're going to do. F up. F ascending. Float the top. Okay, float the top. What do you mean by that? I mean float like, and then you get into that as a band teacher, or you go, no, that's wrong, and you get ticked off at, I'm thinking saxophone, because my saxophones sit right here when I'm teaching, and they're usually, legs crossed, leaning back. Like, hey, no, we're doing this exercise right now. And it goes like, So use the vocabulary that they understand, or that's common to them maybe in even other classes. My master's is in educational leadership, which is basically administration. So I'm all about the cross-curricular stuff. So I use constant common vocabulary between stuff that they're learning currently in class and musical terms. So we'll start defining musical terms. I don't want you to think that I'm like not teaching music, just to be clear. They do know all tenuto, staccato, they know the words. But in the instance of what you want, you need to make sure that the vocabulary is simple and clean. Imagery, I use a lot of this. So when I tell my kids, you need to have you guys ever been in like a cold bath? Like when the water was hot and it just got lukewarm, so it gets them to start thinking about what's happening up here. Music and learning is about connection. So if a student is storing every piece of information that you're saying in your class in one part of their brain, they're not using anything else. So they go in that room and they access it in their brain and they go, okay, this is what such and such wants. This is what Mr. Loyde wants today. Anything else? They're not thinking about it all day. They need to think about it all day. That's the whole point of instructional engagement. Oral integrity. And I do say student and teacher, and I have this saying, I'll probably say it again, hopefully. Your band or orchestra or choir or whatever you're teaching is only as good as the ears that are standing in front of it, period. I don't care what anybody says. And I don't mean always the everyday teacher, but you need to make sure that the students understand what they're hearing and you understand what you're hearing all the time. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Verbal and nonverbal response. So, and you probably saw me conducting Goofy down here. That's not for show. Like I'm constantly, you'll see in the A-flat Clark studies, if you watch my mouth, I just do it automatically because the students need to see that I'm approving or that I'm with them, and it's not, checking my text messages, things like that. They need to see nonverbal response to their sound, good or bad. They need to see, it's not always verbal like, hey, that sucked. That's not what you say to a kid. Well, I tend to. But that wasn't very good. Always go after the instrument, not the kid, by the way, or the sound. So anyway, I'm sure I'll talk about that, nonverbal and verbal responses later. Okay, oral properties. I'm dragging a little bit. I got you. Okay, so this is the order of which I think people should, when they're doing exercises or when they're trying to make music, this is the order of which you should be hearing things. Tone is absolute the top. No one wants to hear anything that sounds bad, period. I don't care if it's your grandma or a toddler. No one wants to hear bad sounds. You need to play recordings for your students so they have an understanding of what that is. That's part of the oral integrity thing, right? The intonation. Yes, if you want your band to sound good, it's got to be in tune, not too many waves. Well, I can't hear the waves. Okay, if you can't hear the waves, there's 1.5 million applications out there to tell you whether you're right or wrong, as well as hardware, that'll tell you. And we sing a lot, obviously, like I said earlier. Rhythm. You need to implement a counting system. I don't care if you're one te tute, one e anda, or zippity doo dah. You have to have some sort of system to communicate how something needs to go. And the kid needs to be able to take that system and use it. I know it's, and you might be going, this is what? What do you mean? I've come across a lot of teachers who have zero counting system, and the reason I say it's so important is because in the end, the student has to have the tool. They can't. Let's say you picked up a brand new piece of music. What are you going to do? What is the kid going to do? Wait for you to teach it to him, or wait for you to? We're about building independent musicians, and you'll see that later. You have to teach them how to make it on their own. Balance. That's a critical thinking thing. So balance is how the ensemble sounds, and that's so subjective to who's teaching the band. Some people like a lot of sax. I would rather them not even be heard. Some people like not having bassoon in their band, and I get sad because bassoon is the best thing ever. Some people like a lot of tuba, a lot of bass. Some people like no percussion at all. Like, why is the percussion in this room right now? Sorry, there was this one teacher. Who was that? Oh, this one teacher was like, I was back there messing with the percussion, and this kid, goosh, what was that? I've never heard that before. I was like, that was the bass drum part. Like, whatever. It was an interesting day. Style is also subjective. So if you and I were all playing the same piece of music, Row, Row Your Boat's going to sound different compared to who it is. So, but that's critical thinking skills, which we'll go over in a little bit. So I don't know why I titled this slide. I'm sure I'll figure that. Oh, this is why. Okay, so when I'm teaching, I know a lot of this is like daunting and a lot of words and a lot of like explanation. So feel free to go like, what? But this is how I teach. So I use a Socratic approach. I learned that from Amanda Drinkwater. I student taught at Marcus High School, by the way, in case anybody cares and knows who that is. That's in Dallas, Texas, Flower Mound, technically. And she taught me about Socratic teaching, and it's about questioning. You want to question the kid, but not to the point of annoyance. But you want to make sure that they understand what you've always heard this. If you can teach it to somebody else, you understand it. So you want the kid to be able to teach their neighbor how to play an F concert, or how to do really anything, how to sit, because they can't figure that one out yet. Anyway, constantly reference direction and motion. I know I said Samuel Jackson. I wrote most of these on a plane. I've been flying everywhere, but y'all know who Samuel Jackson is, right? Mm-hmm. If you hear his voice in the head just saying like, the half note needs to go, or the whole note needs to go to the rest, or you need to put more motion. Like, I just hear that for some reason, like, I don't know why. Like Deep Blue Sea, the shark ate him. Anyway, he ate him. Choose points of emphasis if we're talking about direction. And so when we're playing a whole nut Remington, and you'll see it's in the Clark study. You'll see my hand do this constantly. That's nonverbal, right? It's not go, 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 go. Okay, as a player, and I hope you can think back to when you were players, not like players, but like players, la-da-da-da-da. Make sure you get that one in the edit. The direction that your teacher wanted you to go, if he yelled at you, you probably didn't hear what he said. You're playing your scale and you're like, his mouth is moving and he looks pissed. but I don't know what you want, so I'm going to try as hard as I can to make you stop making that face. So sometimes, that's why I say I do all these jaw motions, and I go, yeah. I do that a lot because it's about coaching, it's about encouragement. So make sure when you're doing these things, like a Remington or whatever, that you're going, I want the beat here. I want the emphasis here. I want you to do this. It's constant coaching. Because if you go, think of it like this. If you are a captain of a ship and you said, okay, all my mates here, cool, I've taught you how to do the boat. We've talked about it, right? All right, now go. I'll see you later. That's basically what you're doing every exercise, is like saying, okay, go. And you go, you're doing it wrong the whole time. So you have to make sure you're coaching them the whole time, or you need to get on the boat with them and just kind of, all right, no, hey, come here. This is the wrong way. So just constantly doing things like that. I use analogies. Obviously, I just used one. Anyway, I use analogies like it's mayonnaise. I hate mayonnaise. Why did I use that reference? Ketchup? No, barbecue sauce. Yeah, barbecue sauce is amazing. So I always am talking about, I talk about walking through door. Anything that comes to my mind, I know that sounds weird, but if it's like a roller coaster, I always talk about, that tick, 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 tick. That feeling, you need to have that going through this race. I always talk about things like that. So using as much analogies and drawing from your own experiences as possible is really important, because the kids want to know who you are. That's why they're your students. They're there for the music, but they're also there because they want to have a connection with you. So talk to them about stuff. So I've talked to them about ridiculous things like, oh yeah, this one time in Spain when I fell under a quarry and this guy laughed at me and I was rolling for days. And sometimes it's story time, but sometimes it always connects to what's happening at the time in that music. So anything that you can excite their senses, touch, feel, thought, whatever. I think thought is a sense. I know that sounds like a crazy person's statement, but I think it is. Anyway, so establish a roadmap for their exercise. So we do this thing for marching season. By the way, I do everything the same in marching season that I do in concert season. This is not just a concert season talk. This is for everything. So the roadmap for the exercise. So one of the things that we did this year for our show, because I was just tired of how the first movement was going, is we did this. I said, hey, all right, let's go through this. A to B is what? Where's the climax of the tune? Like, where are we going here? Where's the absolute climax of the entire piece? So I put a dot. And it basically turns into this plot thing, and then we just start filling bars, and I'd put descriptions like super hype moment, all those things. And the kids really dig that, so they can just sit there and follow along and go, oh, okay, I know where we are. This is awesome. This is an awesome part. This is where I'm supposed to be really excited. This is where I'm supposed to get the crowd excited. This is where I'm supposed to get the audience engaged in what I'm doing. We just played Dan's On. That was the last piece we played this year. Dan's On #2 by Marquez. Really cool piece of music. But the kids are so square at Cedar Ridge. They're just not, they don't have I guess, soul? I don't know. I'm from Houston, so, you know what I'm saying. We got plenty of that. But it's just very, they approached it very da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, like robotic. And I was like, hey, no. Loosen your ties, sit back, relax. This needs to be what you don't want your parents to see. You need to probably get engaged in it a little bit more. And we talked about the different sections of the Marquez and how it works. Anyway, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Yes, I do use the words feel, vibe, and color quite often. And yes, those are contradictory to what I said earlier about simple. But the kids like the word vibe. I don't know, is that a kid saying that everywhere now? The vibe. And maybe that's a South thing. The vibe here is weird, or God, they say some weird stuff now. Anyway, the color. When I talk about the color, kids don't really relate to anything else but dark and light, at least in my experience. So if you say it needs to be blue here, blue is not the same to everybody. I tell my kids, and I have a color synesthesia, so when I'm listening to music or whatever, I just get this weird hazy thing going on. The kids are like, whoa, what do you see, man? I'm like, brown, because that was out of tune. So it's just some things. So when I'm using color as a reference, you just have to go it needs to be a lot lighter here. Some of you are playing in a really dark area of your instrument. It needs to be a little bit zippier, brighter, anything that you can use there. But we constantly talk about that. We can't let them go away. Incorporate expressive qualities into tempo in tempo or style. So What I mean by that is what you'll see. Probably next, maybe? No. Emphasize the relationship of the harmony of the melody. My friend asked me what I meant by this, and as a bassoon player, this is why I write this sentence, because in middle school, is anybody a middle school teacher in here? Oh, heck yeah. So in middle school, you punish the low people. You just bum, 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 whole note, which is, half of this is going to be all up in your wheelhouse because you have to talk about the direction of why and why that their part's there. Because, and if you, it's even in acting. I can tell it's a good movie if the people in the background aren't like doing that. I've seen some terrible movies. I don't really watch them anymore, but that, or TV shows where the extras, not the extras, but the person who's not talking on camera, watch them. That's how you know it's quality. So with the kids that are playing the supporting roles, they need to understand the direction of the melody and support it with their, I'm about to use my word, energy. Support it with their motion, with the harmony. So just keep that in mind. Conductor sensitivity, obviously I have a lot of fun with that, but I don't wave my arms a lot, to be honest with you. Discuss performance, constantly evaluate, you get it. I use SoundCloud, which has been an awesome thing. I'm sure there's some copyright things out there, but I make the kids go on there. And the reason I like SoundCloud, and people use Google Docs and things like that, I use SoundCloud because you can go to the minute or the second and go, I liked this, or this is what I thought was happening here, and the kids can do that. And I thought that was a cool thing. And actually, I think you can, some of it's kind of bad. I think our stuff is accessible. CRHS Wind Ensemble, it's on there somewhere. But when you're talking about good and a bad performance, you need to be more specific. Anyway, you can read all these things. You smart people. Okay, I'll shut up for a second. This is only the A-flat Clark studies, and this is not how I play them. Like, I don't play them all in a row. But you'll see all the variations that we've done this year. And the funny thing about this video, that first video you saw was made in February of last year. This one is made in May, like the last day of school. So have fun with this. Anyway, so down here you'll see the description of what we're doing. And ignore the flute sound. And you can see, like, you'll see my mouth. Telling them, I don't talk to them, but I'm constantly, this is what I want, this is what I want. And we didn't rehearse this. Just, I know that sounds like weird, but. Wasn't planned. They're just following me. Conductor sensitivity. Telling them what to do. I want it here. Thank you. This is the variation, one of the variations. We call them 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and straight. It's just about, I'll usually take this faster, and I do this with all technical passages. Like if it's difficult for a kid, like Nemesis Satu or anything like that. Shakatakati, shankakakang. And yes, I use a metronome like all the time, but in this, I didn't want you to hear the click. There it is again. That oboe's killing me right now. So we usually take that a couple different tempos. And this is, when I say articulation exercise, I do this. I subdivide everything. One, you're already getting the kids to understand the subdivision of a beat, and you're knocking out articulation, period. And we go, well, you'll see. We go faster and faster and faster. This is all building to a march, by the way. So because our march was in F minor, and it had a lot of E flat 7s in some of the area, we played Invictus. You'll hear we're trying to add the E flat 7 to be in the right place. So it's in relation to the tonic key, A flat, dominant, you know. So that was a better one. So this is a march variation. I made this variation. None of this is written down, by the way. So I made this variation to mimic the beginning of Invictus because we had issues in the clarinet. With the articulation with the flute and the trumpet. Not so much with the style. So the French horns are playing upbeats. Of course, it's all tonic, chop, 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 and everybody else is playing downbeats, and they're playing the chop, 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 chop. You'll hear this in a second, and then obviously the low brass and things at the beginning of Invictus have a pretty strong melody that you'll hear. So, any questions about that before you hear Invictus? Yes, sir.
Okay, so you start off with like the written Clark study, and
Yes,
then
sir.
just kind of have them do rote-based variations of it.
Sometimes it's rote. Other times, like subdivision, I don't expect them to. Well, by rote, do you mean it's not written down?
Right, like all these variations, like the da 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 dee da 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 dee, like you have them all just like wrote through that, or you have it all written down?
They all have a solid concept. Well, the first time I do it is I go, all right, play this rhythm, which I write like dotted quarter note, eighth note, eighth note, eighth note.
Okay.
And I go, play this rhythm, A flat Clark studies. First note is the dotted quarter note, followed by this and this and this. It's because I don't like to just go, it goes like this, da 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 da. No, 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 no. I make sure I have it tactile first, and then once they get the ball rolling, okay, this is what we're going to do to it now. This is what we're going to do to it now. But I use something familiar, like A flat Clark studies we started last year, and this is this year, and this is all the things they can do with it. Does it make any sense?
Right, so you basically just really start off with just the good fingering pattern first, and this goes back to what you were talking about earlier about setting forth like the good long tones and not moving forward.
Right.
And all that stuff. So this is pretty much just like doing this a little bit over the year.
Oh yeah.
It's not just like 3 weeks. Okay, here we go.
No. We didn't do the March variation until probably the mid time of the year, but I introduced the A flat Clark studies way early. Any type of subdivision I introduce way early.
Okay.
So like this kind of stuff, we'll sit there and we'll march it too, just because I'm like I just like to kill kids like that. So like trying to get them to march in 3/4 and then stop is hilarious. But all these things are definitely developed. It's not like here's your packet. I never like to give kids packets because if you don't do everything in that packet, it becomes irrelevant. 2, if you need to give it to them a little bit at a time, so they understand where its places. So I'll go, okay, here are your Clark studies. We're only looking at A flat. Well, we've done like every Clark study, but this is just the one we chose to do because of the march. So if that makes any sense. Was there another question? Okay, so you'll hear the march here. I don't have to play through the whole thing. I really just want you to hear the beginning, but I feel like I'm like talking too much. And again, I do not like seeing myself do anything. But you'll definitely hear if it's going to play for me. Or if it's not. Hold on. There it is. You'll hear the beginning, how it relates to that A flat Clark variation. That stuff. The sequence. I will say this. We do a lot of scales, at least last year we did, because the next section of Invictus is very scalar in the clarinet stuff. So the close A and scales helped a lot with that. I didn't have to go and teach it. I just went, you got it, because it didn't look as hard to them before. Now the double tonguing stuff, I start using the Clark studies or subdivision to get into double tonguing and triple tonguing, because equus as well as this, as well as variants all had double tonguing in it. I wonder if this is the recording where it's... no, it's not. We played this better in April. Anyway. Ugh, guys, come on. So you can kind of hear that altissimo issues that we had, because this is early, right? This is... Oh, I lied to you. This recording was done in December. This is like 3 months into school. So, but you can hear the altissimo issues, which is why we went back and tried to correct some of those things. And I hope you heard some of the E flat 7s in there, especially in the trio area. G, dom. So we worked on that to make sure that it was a nice fit. It's not a bump. So I have this kind of in most things, but what I think you need to do from this point, and of course you can ask me tons of questions in a minute, if you even have any. But listen actively in everything. And this is people don't really understand when I say that, like, if someone, that's why I go, like, when I try to reference classical music, look, okay, my mom and my dad are both band directors. So I woke up every morning hearing band music. When we cleaned, when we went to school, like, I'm good. So, like, nowadays, I don't listen to that. You know what I do listen to? Taylor Swift. What the kids are listening to. Because that's their oral vocabulary from that point. So if we, as teachers, shun ourselves and go, no, you need to be listening to this. Have you heard and we do need to educate them. Don't get me wrong. You need to educate them, but you also need to make sure that you have a varied sound palette. And when I say the buzz of the lights, like literally, I can hear the air right now because I'm like listening to everything that's happening. Like every paper motion, every finger rub, I listen to everything. And I train myself to do that. And it's not something I'm born with at all. It's just something, partly is my paranoia, but the other side is just like going, okay, what is all, and allowing sound to come into my face as opposed to listening for, I got to hear the clarinet. And that's because when we do that, that's all we hear. And then meanwhile, trumpet idiot is playing wrong notes. And you're like, it sounds amazing. Great, guys. No, that's a bad idea. So listen to everything. Expand your musical exposure. I just said that. Share your sounds. Biggest thing, and you can feel free to send me anything. I really don't care. I'll give you feedback. And if you haven't figured it out now, I'm pretty dry, and I just kind of go. I'm not a mean person, but I tell how it is. Anyway, but email someone. Don't like I said earlier, your band's only as good as the ears that are in front of it. So if you can't hear, you better find somebody who can. Like earlier on in my teaching career, like I couldn't hear the same way that someone who's been teaching for 50 years has. I work with a colleague, his name is Rick Rodriguez, he's an awesome percussionist. He has better ears than me. He's only taught like 4 bands in his life, but he's like been teaching for 30 years. So I'm going, okay, so if I'm playing something, I go, hey Rick, stand behind me. I need you to listen. Because for me, I know what I'm listening for. Or if I'm trying to perform, if it's a performance moment, I don't want to be listening because you need to be performing. And we're so analytical as teachers that we tend to not perform. And so the kids become non-performers. They're mathematicians at that point. So you just have to watch it there. Remain receptive. Like I am definitely not the end-all be-all of anything, and nor will I ever be. And I don't claim to be as intelligent as this place thinks I am, but I definitely want to make sure I listen to everything or that anybody is saying and giving me advice. Yes, sir.
Talking about getting other people to come in and listen to what you hear. Do you do anything personally to change your way of hearing? Because sometimes we probably all do it. We get into it and we just kind of get into a rut. We keep hearing the the same thing, like keep yourself fresh and like, oh, I never heard that before.
Yes.
You know, like, do you have any personal?
I do. What I do, I tell my team to do this too. Well, the first thing I do is I make sure I go and listen to other bands that are like mine, other high school bands, or other people's recordings. So like when we were playing Medieval Tune, I listened to about 13 different recordings of it. And I was like, I've never heard that. I don't like that. So I have my taste. That's the first thing. But then when you sit there and you're listening to the same Anne McGinty tune for like 5 months, what I do is I go through every line. I listen to it as many times as there's a score line. And I just listen to every specific line, heard what this kid did or didn't do, or what the recording did or didn't do, and go after that. And I don't mark my score very much because I'm weird about that. I don't know why. I just like to preserve copies. But I go through and I tell my staff to do this as well. Like, do you not hear that your alignment, or the alignment between like this line and this line, are not even close? They might not be able to hear that right off, but you've been enjoying it for so long that you just forget that it's there. So it's like I go back and recheck. That's the biggest thing I do. But also, don't listen to it. I like take a straight up break. I teach it in class, but I go, never mind. So I don't know if that answered your question. That's the only thing that I really do. Being passionate is not something that comes naturally to me because I'm so dry. But the kids have to know that you care about what you're doing and who they are. So, and they'll start making music for you if they understand those two things. Like I had a valedictorian in my band last year. Super smart guy. He's a saxophone player. I don't know who put him on that, but he's a good musician, but he gets bored so fast, you know. But as soon as I start getting to understand where he's coming from musically and what his interests are musically, is kind of when we can start making music in the band hall together. Like that's really simple sounding, but get to know your kids. Everybody hears that stuff, but yeah. But looking like the music, like you can see, I'm very passionate about that stuff, and I'm not a band geek by any stretch. I don't think, even though I'm literally giving a presentation at a music conference. But I definitely think that we as stoic as I tend to be on the outside, like if you see me today or around and I'm just looking like this, my brain's going, but I'm like really excited about something, you'll see it on the podium. So when you're on the podium, don't ignore them, obviously. Don't just, and they're playing like a whole note, just be with them and enjoy it with them. And they gotta vibe with you. You gotta make sure that you look like the Red Balloon, or what's the hot song now? Ghost Train, I think. Robert Sheldon, is that what that? Ghost Fleet. That is the jam. There's also like a C one, like the Kraken or something like that. It's really cool. Sometimes I wish I taught middle school band. Sometimes, but yeah, you have to look like that stuff because they get excited about those things. So anyway, if you guys want to email me, you certainly can. That's my email address for the district, and I definitely I'm open to help in any way I can. But I thought I was going too slow, but apparently I went too fast. I was worried y'all were getting bored. But if you have any questions, I'm all ears. Like you can just fire at me now. Anything doesn't have to be about this presentation. I'll open it up for you guys. What's up?
You were talking earlier. You were talking about the Remington, like you get your trombones to sing it and everything, like or like the dee do dee do dee do dee, the clarinet exercise. Do you get like your kids to sing a lot of the exercises you do? Just
yes.
Like the Clark studies or whatever?
Yes. Now here's the thing with that. At first I just go, I don't want any rules. There's no rules. You don't have to use this vowel sound. Make any sound you want. Sing the line. Is it on pitch? Probably not all the time. But as long as they think about how many times we ask for a musical response, or like it has to be, all your answers have to come from your instrument. I don't like that because it only functions one part of the brain. When they pick up the instrument, especially if you're teaching middle school, they're trying to figure out the instrument. So when we're doing new exercises, I go, okay, guys, this is one time me. I'm going to sing through it. You're going to join me next time. Next time we're going to count it. Next time you're going to watch and follow along. This person's going to play it. Like, we just do a lot of things before we go, okay, everybody's playing it now. Because, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I really can't stand when we start an exercise and everybody just folds. I hate that. So you got to, it's like a precognition, is that what the word is? Yeah, they're already thinking ahead of what's about to happen. So we have to teach kids how to do that by providing them some sort of oral, it's the oral imagery thing, but it's visualization. So if you've ever seen like a skier, like a cross-country skier or an Olympic skier, before they even go on, first of all, they're watching. This is where I take my lessons from. They're watching what's about to happen down the slope, right? And then they kind of do this thing. Most of our kids in the musical classroom do this. Oh, wait. That's what they do, right? That's not watching the ski slope. That's not helping anybody do anything. So I make sure that they understand the process of visualization, oral imagery, whatever you want to call it. And then we step into, let's play it. I know that was a long answer to that.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
You're just getting them, you're taking them away from the machine that they're having to deal with and just focusing on the music that's happening here.
Correct.
Versus the machine they're holding.
Because they're going to want to go home and try to figure it out, as opposed to like, I had a really hard time at school today because I was frustrated because I couldn't play the Clark Study on my saxophone. No, that's too easy. Couldn't play it on my French horn. Yeah, saxophones. Any saxophone players in here? Sorry.
We'll meet you after.
They'll meet me outside, catch me outside. So like they get frustrated because they can't do what you want. And when a kid is frustrated, they quit, especially nowadays, but because there's too many choices to be able to do. Yes, sir.
With the expectations that you have with your top group that you submit to Midwest, from the top group to your bottom group, how do you close that gap?
So the big thing here is, like, the way I presented it to you guys is how I talked to my staff about it. Because the first thing I had two young teachers. I have two young teachers on my staff. And the first thing that they initially want to do is do everything I'm doing. I go, whoa, 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 whoa. No. You need to be on the whole note. And this is why. Because okay, to answer your actual question, then I'll actually get into an explanation. Everything has to be diluted down. So if students aren't able to achieve playing the A-flat Clark Study subdivided, they need to be subdividing the F Remington, whole note style, at various speeds. Because the whole goal of subdividing anything, for me, is that the sound remains unchanged. Because if you heard in that first clip, we don't want anything to be, right? We don't want any like Laotian chants. So it's about that. So if the students understand the core, or if the staff understands the core of what's supposed to be happening, any exercise can fit any kid. They don't have to play the A-flat Clark Studies. They don't even have to play the scale. So I do this one scale exercise. This is what they try to do. And I said, you should not be doing that. We do this exercise. I think it's a trumpet exercise. We take a scale and off. Next scale. And we go through like 7 of them. So, of course, the concert and varsity band went, okay, let's give it a try. I was like, no, you need to break it up. Play the scale, slurred. Okay, can they do that? With unchanging sound, great. This time, articulate it all. Just up and down, da 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 da, done. Then you can start adding things on the ends, the da 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 da. That's how I built it onto this band, because the band didn't know it before. Da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 dee. Something very simple and accessible, but you don't give them too much. You give them little bite pieces, and this is probably a superstitious thing for me. I don't go, okay, guys, this is what we want to be able to do in the end, but we're only right here, because at least the students I teach go, oh, well, I don't want to try. I don't want to do that. Don't give them a choice. You go, Like these kids in this A-flat Clark study, hey guys, we're going to do the A-flat Clark study. Cool. They don't know all these other variations are about to happen to them that are going to help them do other things. So even the close A, the page I handed them, they were like, oh no. I said, okay, we're only going to 6. Chickowitz, same thing. Oh, that's getting kind of high. We're only going to 6. It's fine. Or 7, because that's the octave. We're only going to 7. Don't worry about it. And then when you expand it to 9, life's good. Because they're not having a false sense they need to build up their confidence and understand the core of what's happening. Anyway, sorry. Did that answer your question? Okay. Sometimes I try to over-explain things. Yes, sir?
I noticed you video or had a lot of videos. How often do you video yourself, and what kind of process do you go through with that?
I did a lot when I was younger. I know I still look young, but I'm over 30. I look like I'm 18. I still get carded everywhere. Anyway, say, sir, are you supposed to be riding the plane when you're there? The plane. Okay, sorry, showing my age now. So with that, okay. Videotaping, I tell my younger teachers to do that, mostly so they can see what they're doing, well, what they're not doing. Because in here, we're doing so many things. Like even when I videotape myself, because we have to submit a video for Midwest, I make sure I video the kids and they know what they're looking at, probably starting in November, and we just keep recording ourselves constantly. I use my iPad. The one video was on a G9X, which is a tiny little Canon camera. But the Midwest one, we get this guy named Ton, West Side Recording. Cool little place. If you have a local video place, or even just a guy who has you don't have to have a crane. You don't have to, that's too much for me. Like, I don't like that stuff. Like, can't you just have one in the corner? But you have to have some, that's what I'm talking about. But you have to have like your picture-in-picture. That's why I'm like a floating ghost down here. Anyway, I record myself for the purpose of seeing what I'm doing wrong, not for the purpose of showing my friends, or it's all for the sake of progress. So we have this saying at Cedar Ridge, like, it's about progress, not perfection. So as long as we're better than yesterday, life's good. As long as I'm not like way back here in my pattern, life's good. If I'm having tempo issues, I'll videotape myself and go, what just happened? Now, audio recording, I audio record myself every day. And when I was younger, I had a longer commute. Now my commute's literally 5 minutes. But I had a longer commute in Houston, so I'd listen to my rehearsal. And I'd listen to what I said and then the result after that. You can do the same thing with the video, but it's like a lot of teachers go, okay, well, I said it and it didn't happen. Well, you need to listen to how you said it, when you said it, why you said it, and if it made sense to the kid. Because if you're saying the same things and the kid's just not doing this, you need to try something else. Like if you're saying crescendo through the phrase, you might need to say, hippopotamuses are blue, do this now. Like they might get that. I know that's an outrageous statement, but they might understand something that you don't think they'll understand. That's why I always say simple language, you know. But with the video, like, I don't really put it on YouTube or anything like that. I don't really show anybody else but myself or my staff if they want to see it, and y'all, because y'all just saw it. I just happen to have that. And I recorded the A-flat Clarks specifically for y'all, so you're welcome. That was hard to get those kids to do that. I had 2 flute players that day. I go, who else is here? All the seniors are gone. There were no seniors in that group, by the way. And I go, okay, here we go. What do we got? You know, piecemeal band. But and where you record, so the sound, okay, this is something that you should know. Does anybody have a recording device in their band hall? Like built in, or did you just bring it? Oh, what do you have?
I have one built in and one that I brought, because the one that I brought.
Okay, yeah. I use a Zoom H4n. Amazing piece of equipment. Like, changed my life. Because it's what you actually hear. It's not like processed and compressed. I put it above my head, about here, and about 2 steps behind me. As long as those 2 stereo mics are catching your entire band, life's good. And if you're like me, I have to get rig a lot of stuff. Like, you saw those lockers behind me, right? Like when it was some of those videos. That's where the recorder goes. Because I'm like, hey, I don't want to get out that, the pole. It's just annoying. So, but use that. iPhone's good, but it picks up too many high frequencies. You'll never hear anything in the mid or low very clearly, and so the balance will always be off. So you'll constantly be telling flutes, you're too loud, and the flutes like can't even be heard. So the H4n usually is pretty clear. Videotaping wise, I usually have, because we have kids who have off periods or whatever, I say, okay, just take this iPad and just start walking around. I just want you to get it, and that's before recording like professionally, just so the kids can get used to it. You know, I have a couple of videos that the kids are like, they're weird. They're a bunch of weird kids. So it's like, they're fun. I like them a lot. But the always have a record of recording, audio or visual. Take notes on yourself. That's one thing that I think people don't do. They listen to it and they go, okay, cool, I said it, I did this, got it. If you take notes on yourself, it's just another process for them to get something out or on paper. It's the same thing when it comes to, I was a bad teacher. I was so evil. I made them write so much at Westfield High School. Because, well, a couple reasons. Obviously, I told you about the standardized testing, and that was the most important thing. So we had to have our students write, but I made them write so much about the music and what was happening in different places that it helped them understand. Like, we played Long for Legend one year. Fun tune, hard. The last one, it's crazy. But they had a better understanding of what their role was, if that makes any sense. And kids like to hear themselves recorded, believe it or not.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
When I did that this year, the kids were like, oh, so that's what we sound like?
I love that.
I was like, wow.
The best thing is watching 7th graders. When
Yeah?
you record 7th graders for the first time, they're like, oh my God, and like they face palm themselves
Yeah.
so hard. It's
Yeah.
really,
It's awesome.
No, it's we just got to like guide them after that and go, okay, now that sounded bad, all right? Good. Okay, this is what we're going to do to fix it, you know. Because if you just let them go, we're not very good. Yes, sir.
I found that it's helpful to record them at the very beginning and then have them listen to it at the beginning and then say, after we've actually worked on a piece to hear where we are ending, and there's a sense of accomplishment and pride in that.
Yes.
Hearing that. Now, I have this question. How many what percentage of your musicians are getting private lessons or take private lessons?
That is a struggle. Okay, so the private lesson thing,
And do you have applied lessons that you give throughout the day with students, or have time for that?
no. We're on a block schedule. So I'm very fortunate that I see my kids every day for a long period of time, but it's in my other school, I didn't get to do that. Here, I would say in the top ensemble, probably the top ensemble, there's at least 70% of them that take lessons. Now, to what volition? I don't know. Some of them are like, whatever. Throughout the entire program, though, it's like 40%. It's not all of them. And we're working on that, but the issues that we have to do with students finding value in that. So one of the things I'm struggling with at my school is students finding value in musicianship, being a musician, playing the instrument, playing the songs, because they're slamma-jamma, like they're just like the band songs. But like last year, we tried to play Overture to School for Scandal, which is very difficult. And the students there didn't really have a counting system, as I was saying before. So like there's some things that we had to overcome. So I think now they'd be more receptive to playing or being in private lessons because they understand the quality of music that they have to be able to do. So when you were talking about recording at the beginning, we recorded our first run-through of Overture to School for Scandal. It was rough, so bad. But the kids kind of understood that and go, okay, I actually like this song now, like at the end. But it's kind of what you want, right? Yes, sir.
I guess a two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
How long are your class periods, and what percentage do you do, like warming up basics, and then what percentage do you do literature? And then my other part of my question is, depending on, it ranges from different levels of your groups, but let's say you work on, 8 count tones, 4 count tones, whatever, because they just can't do it well yet. When you go to literature, is your literature easier than what your working on in basics, or do you do kind of like medium or working up toward the literature? You know what I mean? I don't know how to put it.
I understand what you're saying. So for me, I always make the fundamentals more difficult in the end, more difficult than the literature that we have to play. So like the close A, that's harder than pretty much anything that any players individually have to be able to play. Now, Overture to School for Scandal is the exception to that because every piece, everybody's part is basically an etude, and no one is on the same parts. So if you're playing something that complicated, I would say that in the end, the piece would probably end up being harder. In terms of the amount of time that I would spend on those fundamentals, it varies throughout the year. So towards the end of the year, I don't do as much. So a standard day would be me, okay, we're humming, great, 2 minutes. Then we're going, I should actually just pull it up because something I do, by the way, you might want to do this with your kids. I use GroupMe, and I text them before they walk in that door, this is what we're doing today in the order and the timing. So basically, our class starts at 2:45, and by 3:15, at least towards the end, we're done warming up. And from 3:15 to 4:05 or 4:10 is all music. But that varies. So like some days I'm like, guys, we need to do a lot of music today because you need to do a lot of learning. We shorten the fundamental time because I know that I'm not going to have them play, or I know that they know that the focus of intonation is not going to be the priority today. Like, yes, tone is always the priority. Now, when you're talking about like a long tone or something like that, I always, like what I was saying with the scope and the curriculum and all those things, I knew, and I'm kind of contradictory in saying this because last year I played stuff that was too hard for them on purpose because they were like, oh, we've already played this song. Like we played Colonial Song. But last year, we actually played Colonial Song, not just played the notes on the page. No. Like, that first note needs to be hurtful, not in a bad way. But you know what I'm saying? Like, yearning. Anyway, so they kind of understand that now. That being said, all of last year, we're doing that scale exercise I was singing earlier. We're doing all sorts of rhythmic complexities, duple versus triple things, throughout the A-flat Clarksetas and other things. That all contributed to me going, I want to be able to play Equus in a year. So I'm casting my mind ahead, and kids don't know that, but I go, okay, I want to play this. So you look at what they can play now, and I always go, what can they play now? And then I go here. I don't go, I don't ever pick something where they're at because that's going to bore the kid. The kid does want challenge, but you don't want to pick something where they're not going to be able to achieve it very well because then it's not music. It's still a math problem that they don't understand. So, does that answer both questions? Yeah. I was like, you can clarify, and you're not going to annoy me.
It's hard because my group, I'm a junior high teacher.
Right.
And so my kids are starting off in 7th grade, and 8th grade they're okay, 9th grade they're getting better. So my stuff is like really focusing on tone, long tones, good technique, that kind of stuff. And so I'm trying to think, how do I go from teaching something very simple and basic that needs to be really good to, okay, now we're going to play Mary Had a Little Lamb because we still suck at whole, you know what I mean? Like,
what state do you teach in?
Utah.
Okay, so in Utah, is there like things you have to play at contest?
No.
Okay, so in Texas there is. It's called the Texas PML, the Prescribed Music List. I think it's kind of weird, but we do it anyway. That's kind of a guide for quality literature throughout Texas that has to get played at contests. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because I wish I had it with me, but there's criteria. I was taught this in college. Criteria that we have to follow to make sure it's quality, A, and B, I look at the teachability of it and how it's going to influence my students. So if I'm looking at something like Invictus, I go, okay, what is this teaching my students? Well, I know that there's going to be triple tonguing in our show and double tonguing in our show next year, so the students are going to have to be able to articulate quickly. So I can teach them through a basic format, which a march format is very basic, and go, I want to teach them this. So I'm going to use this as the vehicle to teach them this, and they'll be in a song. Cool, that's going to go, because we didn't put it wasn't all of them at the same time. Okay, good. We're going to do that. We're going to have medieval tune. And then, okay, later, they don't know it yet, is Equus. Da-da-da-dee-da-da-da-dee-da, really quick. So when you're saying maybe they're bad, maybe had a little lamb, which sections are bad? those are the types of things I would start asking myself is like, which students or which things are behind? What skills are they missing? Are there gaps to fill? And believe me, I've taught at Westfield High School. There were some gaps to be filled, my friend. Like trying to play some of the literature we had to play because we had to play a certain grade was so difficult sometimes because I knew that this kid couldn't play anything, but he has to sit on my stage and play grade 4 literature, which is like 2 away from the top. So I don't modify parts. I would never encourage that. But I do know that when I'm looking or listening or looking at a score, I go, what are the challenges of the ensemble and what are the challenges of the individual? Those are the biggest things I have to ask. Because if the student, like say there's a big old trombone exposed moment, I'm not going to do that to myself. And I'm not going to, and I know middle school tunes is like everybody's playing the whole time. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. But that's what it is sometimes. Trying to find pieces that don't do that. Or find pieces that, okay, my flutes are awful, hide those flutes. Find a song that hides them. My saxophones are terribly, they don't do tuning tendencies very well. Okay, well, find something that's not an F concert. That's what I'm saying. So it's like, so you don't have to deal with the Ds and the C sharps and all this stuff unless you want to teach that. Because just getting in there and having to teach those things that's up to you. How long do you have to teach?
45 minutes.
I've taught in,
Every day, but-
yeah, believe me, there was something called Winchie where I came from in Houston. This is a magnet school thing that they transferred. I only saw half of those kids 25 minutes a day. And my last band, before I left, on that stage had 24 kids in it on the stage. I'm sure you're like, oh, yeah, okay. Because in Texas, that is freaking weird. Like 24 students, including the percussion. It was tiny as like 2 clarinets on the stage. Like, what are we going to play? We have to play like Contrasto Grosso and this bourgeois piece, and it was difficult. But I knew what the strengths and weaknesses are, and as long as you know what your strengths and weaknesses are, like build the weaknesses, but don't expose them. The strengths, it's careful. You have to pick literature very carefully. That's good luck. I know what because I know what you're talking about. I'm like, but if I heard your band, I go, you probably should play this. I'm good at that. I will say that, by the way. Just because I've been through enough scores and have taught enough bands to go, a varied levels of bands to go, don't play that song. Oh, yeah, that would be a good one for you. So if you're like, hey, here's my band, if you email me, I'll go, okay, I got you. This is a good tune. I'm pretty good at that. So, any other questions? I'm like talking until they kick me out. I don't know what my timeline is.
You have about 11 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, look at us. Excellent. Really? Nothing? Of any kind? Okay, I guess I'm not that entertaining. What's up?
Can we get a PDF of your presentation?
I think they're Are you guys downloading it for a purpose?
We're going to integrate it with the video for Music for All.
Oh, okay. So yes,
this
you
is
can.
part of the video.
Okay.
That's up to you if you want to look at it.
No, I perfectly can. No, I'm humanitarian. Anybody can have anything they want. We're all teachers in here. So if I like what do you call it? If you, where can I thought about actually making a temporary website so you can just download it, but obviously I'm not that smart to do it or quick enough. But what I will do is if you email me and say, hey, I want that PDF, I'll just send it to you. It's not a big deal at all. But the videos don't come with the PDF, by the way. Not at all. Good? Solid? If y'all catch me around the conference, say what's up. If you guys want to meet, you can call me Jager. Don't call me Nolan. Jager's my middle name. Jager. Oh, it's up there. Cool. I was like, people misspell it all the time. If you're like, what is this guy even all about? Just Google my name. You'll find lots of funny things and not funny. But you can like see my band on there, like the marching band, and there might be a couple other videos of some other things. But also, I'm part of this large camp. It's Vocal Majority. You might have heard of it. It's floating around everywhere now. Back in the day, We started that with Jennifer Sadoff, or now Dr. Arbach. So if you're curious about stuff about double read things, I got you too.